How you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash?
Because I have common sense.
But he is a master deflector. Every step of the way, he blamed it on DEI, then an Obama policy from 2012 that he never overturned, then a Biden policy, all these different things. And it culminated into him saying Pete Buttigieg was such a mess that it's partially his fault. And Pete Buttigieg responded, despicable. As families grieve, Trump should be leading, not lying. We put safety first. We drove down close calls. We grew air traffic control and had 0 commercial airline crash fatalities out of millions of flights on our watch. President Trump now oversees the military and the FAA. One of his first acts was to fire and suspend some of the key personnel who helped keep our skies safe. Time for the president to show actual leadership and explain what he will do to prevent this from happening again. I think Pete Buttigieg is asking for too much because Trump is not a real leader.
President Trump said a diversity push by the FAA, the U.S. government agency in charge of civil aviation, had focused on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities, which he believes led to the air crash in Washington. He added, "They said they can be air traffic controllers." The president appeared to be referring to diversity and inclusion policies established during the Obama administration. They included targeted disabilities that the federal government, as a matter of policy, has identified for special emphasis in recruitment and hiring. A new program was established in 2019, during Trump's first term in office, seeking to give people with disabilities a pathway to work in air traffic operations. An FAA press release at the time said, external, the aim was to help prepare people with disabilities for careers in air traffic operations, and that up to 20 people would train for up to 1 year at a number of air traffic control centers. It also emphasized that candidates in this program will receive the same rigorous consideration in terms of aptitude, medical, and security qualifications as those individuals considered for a standard public opening for air traffic controller jobs.
They actually came out with a directive to white, and we want the people that are competent.
How you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash?
Because I have common sense.
Pointing fingers at his Democratic predecessors for policies which have been in place since 2013 and were active during the entirety of the first Trump administration. NBC's Peter Alexander confronted him with that reality at that press conference yesterday. Watch.
The implication that this policy is new or that it stems from efforts that began under President Biden or the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is demonstrably false. It's been on the FAA's
Who said
website.
That, you?
No, it's on the website, the FAA's website. It was there in 2013. It was there for the entirety.
What I read.
It was there for the entirety of your administration too. So my question is, why didn't you change the policy during your first administration?
I did change it. I changed the Obama policy, and we had a very good policy. And then Biden came in and he changed it. And then when I came in 2 days, 3 days ago, I signed a new order bringing it to the highest level of intelligence.
He also partly blamed his predecessor's initiatives to hire people with disabilities. But take a look at this. It's an FAA bulletin from more than 2 years into Trump's first presidency, highlighting its pilot program to help prepare people with disabilities for careers in air traffic operations. President Trump's comments yesterday faced swift backlash, the NAACP calling those remarks unpresidential, divisive behavior, adding that the president was using the highest office in the land to sow hatred rooted in falsehoods. The American Association of People with Disabilities writing in this post, FAA employees with disabilities did not cause last night's tragic plane crash. It is extremely inappropriate for the president to use this tragedy to push an anti-diversity hiring agenda. Let's turn to NBC News White House correspondent Yamiche Alcindor. Yamiche, Trump's doubling down on these baseless claims just this morning. Walk us through it.
That's right. President Trump and his allies continue to double down on the idea that diversity, equity, and inclusion programs had anything to do with this sad and tragic collision that happened in D.C. The president was posting just this morning saying this. This is just one reason why our country was going to hell, his words. He posted not only comments from himself, but also comments from his allies like Elon Musk and headlines from the New York Post targeting diversity and equity inclusion programs, criticizing them. We should just note that there is no evidence that diversity had anything to do with this collision as of now. We should also note that the NTSB is the only agency that is authorized to release information about the cause of this collision. That being said, the president, as you noted, was pushed on the idea of why he came to this conclusion, said it was because of, quote, common sense. And we've seen a lot of pushback to this, the NAACP, as you said, but also Pete Buttigieg, who was named specifically by President Trump, said that this was despicable for him to use this. But this is, of course, all part of President Trump's sort of brand of politics, in that he talked about targeting diversity, equity, and inclusion while he was on the campaign trail, and has made it a key part of his administration in the first few weeks here. Anna.
All right, Yamiche Alcindor, thanks for just bringing us the latest comments and putting it all in context for us. Joining us now is former Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano. Thanks for joining us. Secretary Napolitano, first, I just want to get your reaction, your response to some of that finger pointing we heard from the president after this tragedy.
Well, it's unpresidential. He's making unfounded claims before there's been any factual investigation, and he's doing so in such a way to foster his own political ideology, but also to further divide Americans. And in a time of tragedy like this air crash, and it is a tragedy, and we need to keep in mind that there are dozens and dozens of families and friends of those who were killed, and we need to keep them in our hearts and in our prayers. But instead of bringing us together and saying, we're going to get to the bottom of this, we're going to find out what happened, and then we're going to take action to prevent it from happening again, what do we get? Some DEI palaver. It really is unpresidential.
And here was Trump's response when he was asked if he plans to visit the crash site, which is typical when it comes to a natural or an accident that has caused such a tragic moment for this country. Listen.
I have a plan to visit, not the site, because you tell me, what's the site? The water?
Or to meet with the first responders down there?
I don't have a plan to do that.
You want me to go swimming? He asks. Secretary Napolitano, why is it important for presidents to show up to sites of tragedies like this?
Because presidents are our elected leaders, and by physically going to a site, by showing that they care, by demonstrating some empathy with those who have been hurt by a tragedy such as this air crash, they help give us confidence. Is there anything that President Trump has done in the last 2 days with respect to this air crash that has given anybody confidence? No, not at all. And that, to me, is its own tragedy.
President Trump still harping on the DEI policies this morning, as Yamiche brought us. When you see this administration rolling back diversity initiatives and using DEI as a catch-all culprit for various problems, does that track with the reality you saw when you were ahead of a massive department?
No. And part of it is that DEI has become a catchphrase for anything bad. If anything is bad, it's DEI. A helicopter hits a plane going down the Potomac River. Oh, well, that must be DEI. I think the president has a habit of latching on to a few things, and then he just repeats them and repeats them and repeats them. And of course, as we know, repetitiveness leads many people to believe him, which is its own problem. But a diverse workforce, all that means is that you're drawing from the strength of all Americans to work in the government, to work in the public service. I don't know what's wrong with that.
And in business, for example, there are plenty of data points to show that businesses with more diversity are more successful.